Today, we're going to talk about wizards and magic users in the Viscounty of Verbobonc for the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. Hi, this is David with 3 Orcs. My previous videos, we talked about clerics and rangers. I think that now we need to tackle wizards. As you can see on the screen, I have an article about wizard spell casting principles. And I think it's best to start off with that because a lot of times in this video I'm going to refer to specialist wizards because some of the schools specialize in different kinds of magic. And I figure we can cover that too to go over it so you have something to relate to. Specialist wizardry came from 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons. AD&D. I've been using specialist wizards since the 80s. I think having specialist wizards gives them an opportunity to have different character with the magic they cast, and that way not all wizards are the same, and they can specialize in a certain school of magic to give them more individuality. And I think that it adds a little bit more dimension to the game, and I've been doing that since the 80s, since 2nd edition came out. So the first thing I would like to point out is a passage from Verbobonc. It's because all planes and times are open to Verbobonc. He is able to draw either positive power or negative force from the appropriate plane, as to strike fear into the undead creatures or actually deliver a rolling cloud of energy like onto a huge wall of fire. He can likewise use a net of negative power to affect creatures drawing on the positive material plane. The Archmage has the power to cast the Disc of Concordant Opposition, a plane of mixed forces which will blast into nothingness any creature which is not highly resistant to magic. So that's a passage from Verbobonc, which is the greater god of all magic. And a lot of wizards might not necessarily worship him, but they do pay him homage, and with high respect. What I'd like to do is I refer to a description of wizards real quick before we start into the locations. I got this from the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook, and it has a really good passage here what a wizard is. Among all peoples are those who strive to understand the often forbidden and widely feared arcane magics of the multiverse. These few must have no fear in their quest for knowledge, as delving into the arcane involves powers and energies poorly understood by those bound to the mortal planes. If not harnessed with care, unleashing these magics can cause catastrophes of great proportion and slay those who dabble in this art. The reward, however, for the diligence and willingness to plumb the depths of these magical energies is potentially great indeed. Wizards bind themselves to this task, seeking to master eldritch sorceries and unravel the riddles and meanings of the world. They use these powers to reshape the world around them and bring princes and kings to their knees. In old D&D, they referred to them as magic users. And then over time, starting with 3rd edition, I believe, they changed the name to wizards. And Castles and Crusades uses that as well. So let's go back to my article here on wizard spell casting. The thing I wanted to point out in this article is this different schools of magic. I came out with these axioms, these rules, these principles of magic. I read this really fantastic fantasy book back in the 80s called Master of the 5 Magics. I believe the author's name is Hardley. It's a fantastic, really fun book to read, and it has some great ideas. And what he did was his world, his magic system was based on these sympathies, these principles, these maxims, these doctrines. And I thought it was like creating a science around magic. And I thought that was fantastic. So I went ahead and I added quite a bit more to fit for D&D. And I believe that I gave individuality principles to each of the schools of magic. So often I'll throw these in when it comes to role-playing. And when we talk about the schools of magic in Verbobonc and Dyvers and different cities around the area, often you'll see that the teachers there are actually specialists in one school of magic or another. So I put a list here of these principles and maxims and these rules and the laws of every school of magic. So what's important here at the bottom is rules of wizardry school. I created 3 rules for this to help explain in role-playing terms about the school of magic. So the first one is the postulate of invariance. The postulate of invariance. It's a governance that dictates 9 rules abide. The postulate actually states that there can only be 9 schools governing magic. So that explains the 9 schools of magic. And then I created an axiom of least contradiction, which states that existing magic cannot be canceled or superseded by the opposite specialization. Then I created the verity of exclusion. A specialism of school prohibits another. That states that any who are capable of wielding a magic school are inherently incapable of wielding another magic of the opposite school, and vice versa. The increasing complexity of magic and the increase of both breadth and depth made it impossible for wizards to work across disciplines. The chart, which I got from 2nd edition, for example, would state that if you were a specialist in evocation, like fire-based spells like Fireball or Lightning Bolts, you would not be able to cast any transmutation or enchantment spells from those schools. But as a bonus, you'll get an extra spell per level in that school alone, and you also get a bonus to casting those spells, like a +1 or something. You can cast the other schools on this chart as normal. And divination, which is in the center, all schools of magic can cast divination without any extra bonus or any negative effects. Okay, that wraps up why I'm using the School of Magic and how I use it in my campaign. So let's go ahead and continue with the video, what this is about the locations of wizards in Verbobonc. I created this article here for new players. And I'm going to start at the bottom because it gets more detailed as we get into the city and the universities there. So let's go ahead and start off with independent wizards. There's many wizards in the world that either practice their research as a hermit, out in the wilds, alone with no civilization within miles. A wizard will set up shop in a small town or a hamlet to practice in exchange for providing the locals in need and yearly taking on a new apprentice that shows promise and passes the wizard's test. That apprentice will be expected and used as a lab assistant, a servant, until promoted to a wizard. They'll serve out their apprenticeship there. That's a standard way of players to start the game off, as their training of a local wizard at any of the small villages in the Viscounty of Verbobonc or the surrounding countries. And most of my towns are not keyed for individual wizard that lives there. Only some do. But you would expect that there would be at least a minor wizard in any of these towns. Of course, one of the most referred to and popular is Rufus and Byrne down in the village of Hamlet. So it's not inconceivable for a player to be an apprentice to Byrne. If I was to run the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign starting with the village of Hamlet, I prefer not to have players start from the village of Hamlet. I'd rather have them come from somewhere else and then arrive together as a group to the village as the modules outlines. That way, it gives all the players the opportunity to explore the village and the plots and the surrounding area and finally find the moat house together. Because if anybody that was from there, that lived there, would probably have much of this information already. And I feel that a fun adventure as a group would be best to come together from somewhere else so that way they can explore and unfold these mysteries together. But there's nothing stopping you from doing that, of course. So it'd probably be a good idea, though, if a character were to get killed, like at the moat house, and they had to roll up a new character. Well, instead of going through all that start or beginning stuff again, maybe they could be an apprentice to Byrne. And he's already at the Hamlet. He'll just join the group. That's just an idea. Let's look at the Gnarley Forest now. The Gnarley Forest elves, Clan Falafel, elves of the Gnarley Forest, are ruled by a council of wizards, 5 strong, and have always produced more wizards than other clans. Most are specialist wizard. However, one school never specialized as necromancy. Any wizard daring to specialize in necromancy is expelled from the clan, hunted down, and destroyed. Clan Falafel elves are mostly gray elves, and there's a few high elves that make up the village, the clan. I would say that I would not I would say that most of the wizards from the 4 clans of the Gnarley are from here. But the other clans must have wizards too, because multi-class for elves is fairly popular in the world. A lot of them are fighter wizards, fighter magic users. And so it would be conceivable that you could have a player, an elven or a half-elven player, apprentice at any of these clans. But I just wanted to point out that Clan Felafel is the strongest of the wizards, of where most of them are. But they don't necessarily have to be from there. Other places from the Gnarley, well, as we know, it's all about woodsmen and people that live off the forest, and lumber and hunting and rangers. It would be very rare for a human wizard to actually be part of any of those organizations, except some of the villages. And some of those villages are quite large, and obviously there'd be a wizard at one of them. So that'd fall under the first category of independent wizards. So they easily could be from one of those other villages, served there, and then maybe found their way to the hamlet or Verbobonc to meet the rest of the players. Okay, Furyondy. There's little in the way of any organized magic in Furyondy. No true wizards guild exists, and the monastery to Bacab has spent at least some time studying there. So there is a big monastery to Bacab there, obviously, and of course clerics, and there would be some sort of formal training for wizardry there, obviously, so they could easily be from there. They could be a cleric wizard if they wanted to, multi-class, but you definitely can just be a wizard. And you were trained at that monastery in Furyondy. Now, of course, the first category always applies. Independent wizards throughout the towns and cities. Easily be an apprentice of an NPC you're going to have to create and make up for the world that they're from. It could be no more than a couple sentences to a couple paragraphs of description of their background, of how they served and who they served, depending on how much you want to put into the campaign. Celene. So Celene, the fairy kingdom of the south, those elves are taught by the masters of wizardry in Anstad, which is the capital of Celene. That's a large elven organization of wizards. And it's really formal. It's got huge resources at their disposal, massive libraries. Many schools of specialization there is offered there, obviously, probably except for necromancy. And an elven character, a pure elven blood character, easily can be from Celene, from that school. Or if you want to, of course, it's the same thing about the independent wizards. You could come up with another reason why an old elf wizard had an apprentice that wasn't in Anstead, and he was somewhere else in that large nation. But there will most likely not be any half-elves from there, because they closed their borders. They want nothing to do with any of the human races or the countries around the area, and it's very hard to even get into that country without any official reason. And it's interesting. On top of that is the village right on the border of Celene. There's quite a few half elves there, and of course there's a few wizards as well. So you could easily be from Ostvark. Ostvark is right on the border, and there's a castle of elves there. You have to get permission from them to even enter Celene. Unless, of course, you're a member of Celene, you're an elf, they're going to let you through. But when there's any relationships between humans and elves, they have offspring that create half-elves, I could see a lot of them being from Ostvark. But, of course, they could be from anywhere in the Gnarly Forest or other small villages in the area. I just wanted to point out that Ostvark is a wonderful, great place to be from if you're a half-elf. Okay, so Dyvers. The free city, the free lands of Dyvers. There's no big university of college of magic there. But you can be an apprentice to any notable wizard working and living there. I expect that the notable wizards probably work with a lot of the guilds there. That city is run by guilds, and they're huge, they're massive, they're powerful. Even the Assassin's Guild would have a staff of wizards on hand. And I actually staffed that with an NPC wizard that you could use, that a person could use for a background training before they became an adventurer. And always in the backgrounds when I create characters for players, I try to link it to give them a real solid reason why they're going to the village of Hamlet, or they're going to investigate any of the disturbances or things that are events that are happening caused by the Temple of Elemental Evil. So these guilds and Assassin's guilds have reasons to help out as well, mainly because, for their own aims, and it's usually political reasons. Okay, in Greyhawk, the city of Greyhawk, if you want a player from that far away, and they made their way west into the Viscounty of Verbobonc for any reasons that you can come up with. There's the University of Magical Arts, there's the University of the Flenace, and the Wizards Guild Hall. And of course, as before, independent wizards. So now we're going to focus on Verbobonc itself. And that's where I have most of my detail. That's why I saved it for last. So we have two big universities there. We have the Silver Consortium, and we have the Wrinkle Academy of Magic. The Silver Consortium is very choosy on who it accepts. They're kind of snobbish. Entrance requirements include minimum of 3rd level in some form of arcane caster or class, an upstanding citizen of the Viscounty, and non-evil. At this point, each guild member must pay a monthly due of 50 gold pieces and must check in with the guild at least once a year. Guild members have access to all the facilities. There's some secret rooms still exist for high-ranking guild members. So this statement is, good information in itself to be used in a campaign. But as regards to starting off a new player in the game, this doesn't show that. Of course, a player could be an apprentice from one of the wizards there. I think what they're stating here is to be a guild member to take advantage of all its services after the fact, after graduation. I guess to become an actual official member of the Silver Consortium, you have to be at least 3rd level. Not just a student going to the Silver Consortium. I think that's a distinction that probably should be made there. And then the Wrinkle Academy of Magic by Obel Quillkeeper Humbleborough, Har. They boast 8 lecture halls, 2 laboratories, a mostly empty library, and an administrative suite. Silver Consortium has more of all that, and we'll go over that right now. So the Silver Consortium is in... Let's see. There they are. They're in the Civic Center on this map right here of Verbobonc. The purple little icons here are schools. So this one, number C5, is the Silver Consortium. It's the Mages Guild. I think that's what that statement previously was regarding, is actually the guild. To join the guild, you have to be at least 3rd level and pay the 50 gold pieces a year fee. But that's something separate from being an apprentice, a student there. And then right next door is the Academy of Farsight, which is a different kind of school. That's a learning school. I can learn how to read, how to write, business, not magic. But next door also is, which is very important here, is the Conservatory of Lear, which is a huge library, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. So, I have a description of the Academy. We went over this on my Verbobonc City article, my video I put up before on this subject. So, the description here is pretty good about what it looks like from the outside. So, the Silver Consortium is a major center of magical study, and is the site of Verbobonc's extensive library and of the occult and arcane. It is not only a major center of education for the magical arts or a library, but its assumed name of Verbobonc's arcane guild. Its members are apothecaries, alchemists, and other spellcasters. They play an active role in Verbobonc and have begun to build a name for themselves in the region. They are led by Julian, a conjurer of great skill. So there we go. There's another reference to specialist wizardry. Under his leadership, the Consortium has maintained a high profile in the Dive region. Something occurred to me. If you don't use specialist wizardry in your campaign or your roles, he can still be a conjurer. Even if you're playing BX box set or old school essentials or just AD&D, first edition. Nothing in the rules can stop him from being a conjurer. That's just what his interest is in role-playing terms. He just likes conjuring spells, and he uses them often, and he has a lot of them. So that's how you can explain away in those rules a specialist. You won't have all those other bonuses, of course, because you're using those rules that don't give you schools of magic, or the opposite school you can't cast it, and you get bonuses for the school that you do have. They don't have those rules, of course. But in role-playing terms, he can still be a conjurer and to specialize in those spells, and he has a lot of them. So that's why they call him that. So there's still a way to get specialist wizards in any rule set. It's just a way of role-playing that. It's that whole argument about how I can make 10 fighters in any rule set and they'll all be completely different. And the newer versions RPGs, like Wizards of the Coast version or Pathfinder, one of their complaints is that all fighters and wizards and thieves are the same in old edition D&D. And my argument is that's not true. You just have to have great imagination and role playing, and you can create a character to look and perceive and to interact with the world as a different kind of character. And so I can make 10 different fighters and they'll all be completely different. Okay, but that's a whole nother subject I'll probably make a video on in the future. So under his leadership, the Consortium has maintained a high profile in the Knife Dive region. Rumor has it that Julim has been approached by the members of the Circle of Eight. As you know, the Circle of Eight is the mysterious assembly of wizards known as the Circle of Eight, and long benefited from the past obscured by misinformation and enigma. Basically, it's the big guys of Greyhawk. It's Big B, Otto, Dromij, Nistel, Mordecanian, Tencher, those guys. In the campaign, that's like a carrot on the stick for a player wizard. Because someday, if this campaign goes well, and you do well, and you finally get to 14th, 16th, 18th level, and you save the world so many times, maybe you'll be invited into the Circle of Eight. That'd be a great way to end the campaign, or to capstone the campaign for that character. So rumor has it that he's been approached. The Civil Consortium bears significant ties to the Society of Enlightened Mages. They're based in Veluna. I didn't have that in my article. So Veluna, right there. There is a school called the Society of Enlightened Mages based in Veluna City. And it's considered to be a branch of that organization. So they're heavily related to each other. And so if a player character wanted to be from Veluna, there you go. There's a school for them there. They have classrooms, libraries, meeting halls, magical transportation between some rooms, students flying between classes, walking, books floating, kind of like a Hogwarts, I guess. Rules are strictly enforced, and the staff seems to have a stuffy feel of elitism to them. So some players don't care for that, and that's one of the reasons why they would choose the Wrinkle Academy instead. There's high security here, very high. There's guards and glyphs everywhere, passwords. The Mages Guild. So I have a description of the guild itself, and most of the chambers are devoted to the Mages Guild, have high security, permanent wards, get scrying, things like that. That'd be very good in the campaign as they get higher level and you want to report back to the guild of activities of the Temple of Elemental Evil. Because you got to remember that the bad guys, the big bad guys in the Temple of Elemental Evil, they have a lot of resources at their disposal as well. I had this whole thing that I talked to the players about in any campaign, really. So let's say you're running this big, great, epic campaign, and you have these very powerful NPCs. And they have a lot of resources at their disposal. They have these great spells. They have direct connection to their gods. And they have a lot of followers with a lot of different abilities and powers. And so they could easily, make it hell for any of the players as they're trying to gain levels, as they're trying to stop this, from the Temple of Elemental Evil from growing and continuing with their plans to take over the city of Verbobonc. So I can imagine if the players pissed off the Temple of Elemental Evil leadership too badly, it would be the end of the campaign, because they'd be sending demons at them. They'd be tracking the players' movements through scrying, through communion with their gods, servants and pets, and all sorts of powers that they have at their disposal to track down the players and deal with them. Send a band of assassins after them. Even in the first module, the village of Hamlet, they got a 10th level assassin coming after them. So the only real defense and mitigation against that, the only way to mitigate the party from getting TPK'd early in the campaign, if the players are too successful and not careful enough, is invisibility. The only thing protecting the players at the beginning of this campaign and mid-levels is for them to be under the radar of the bad guys. So if they're just a thorn in their side, then they're going to let their underlings take care of things. And of course, it's going to fail and fail, because that's how campaigns go, hopefully. And so the party continues to be successful. But eventually, as the player's power creeps up and they get higher level, the leaderships are going to have to take more direct involvement in dealing with the players. If that happens too early, it's going to be over, game over. Because wherever those players go, there's going to be bands of assassins, there's going to be demons, there's going to be all sorts of horrible things. Things teleporting in, scrying, communion. Those players are not going to be able to get away with much. Then if the players are too successful too early in the game, it'll be game over. And so this is one of the reasons why I have developed great backgrounds in the campaign. Because when I develop a background for a character, not only do they know who their master is, or their training facility, or their trainer, or their, who the apprentice to is, who they are, but they also have resources at their disposal. And one of the good things about being from a university is you got great resources at the player's disposal. They have libraries, they have training, they have supplies, they have the people there, the high-level characters there, that they're teachers, the people that run the school, they have them on their side. So when they return, often, hopefully, to report what they found and what's going on with the Temple of Elemental Evil, they'll get more help and assistance from their university, more than they would from like a lone wizard out on the edge of a small village. So like, for example, in the village of Hamlet, since that's the only one I know about that I haven't developed, is Byrne. He's only an 8th level wizard. So let's say he's your master. And so you'd be returning to him to report what you found. And in fact, at the end of the first module of the village of Hamlet, the council of the village of Hamlet asks you to go investigate Nob, because there's no eyes on the temple itself. And so that's what they ask of you if you're successful rooting out Lara the Beautiful. They say, go to Nob and find out what's going on. We got agents in Nob, but we don't have any eyes on the temple. We need somebody to go there. And so let's say they do all this and they get into trouble, and then they have, and the council wants them to come back and report what they find. Often. And sometimes, hopefully they can get help and a place to relax and rest and recoup, level up, get training. So the player will come back to the wizard, Byrne, and there's only so much he can do for him. Byrne probably, in turn, will contact the authorities in the Viscounty, in the city of Verbobonc, and probably this university. Where is he from? I don't think we know that, really. So it'd be up to the dungeon master to figure that out. Byrne could be from Greyhawk, he could be from Verbobonc, whatever. But I guess Byrne could probably turn around as a administrator. I'm going to delete that. Byrne can turn around and go to his master or his organization that he gets assistance from, including the authorities at Verbobonc. But he's only capable of only providing so much assistance, as he's just a lone wizard in a small town, and he's only 8th level. And the players are going to get into a lot of trouble quickly. It would be much more effective and helpful if they got assistance from a great university like the Silver Consortium. But it's up to the player. Some players don't want to be part of a big organization. They want to be a lone wolf or whatever, and they find that attractive to be from some small wizard in a small village somewhere. So it's all up to the player, and the Dungeon Masters probably should point all that out, the benefits of either. So there we go. The Silver Consortium has significant ties to the Society of Enlightened Mages. Notable people, Circle of 8. So you got goods and services available to you from the Consortium. Scribes are available. 5 gold pieces a page, 30 gold pieces per map. Researchers are also available to find specific information, 30 gold pieces per subject. More if it's a high degree of detail. Like NPC characters like the wizard Burn wouldn't be able to offer too much of that, but the school would be able to. And Burn definitely doesn't have a library like this. Just to remind you, I'm just using Burn as an example. This is probably a better way to create NPCs in different villages with mages that the players could have apprenticed from. So I got a description of what the library looks like. There's a public area. Entrance is not restricted, but it costs 5 gold pieces per day. So the players can do their own research. They got a lot of information there. They have an occult section. That's 10 gold pieces a day. They have a magic area. In the library, there's a magic area. It's not restricted, but the security is high. Magic detection spells are present. No magic items are allowed in and out of the library. Cost to enter is 10 gold pieces per day. All arcane spells of 1st to 4th level are here to study, except any spells of the necromantic school. This is just information to use or not use or adjust for your campaign. I know a lot of DMs don't like to offer spells for free. I'm one of them. I don't mind 1st and 2nd level spells being available at a cost. Because in my campaign, magic users do not get spells. They just don't get them. The only way for a wizard character to get more spells is either beyond 1st level, when they're starting spells, is to find them, like loot them in a dungeon or from a wizard's study, from a dead wizard looting his spell book, or trade, make friends with an NPC wizard and trading spells with him and trade. But that's going to take some role playing and trust. And of course, the 4th way is to research or pay for spells at a university. And then I generally only have 1st to 2nd level spells available. Maybe I'll consider a couple 3rd, but it just depends how it goes. Cost and the school, it's 50 gold pieces a month, involves 100 hours of class time per week. All manner of students are accepted into the basic arcane studies, 1st through 3rd level mages. 50 gold, 100 hours. Mid-level school is 4th to 9th level, 100 gold pieces a month. There's no free time while studying the sets of classes. Then finally, the high-level school. I think this right here would probably is really referring to training as you level. At 1st and 2nd level, 1st and 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons make you pay to train. When you go up a level, you have to pay for training. And this is a way to do it right here. These prices are really cheap, though, but it takes longer. It's just an alternative way to handle things, maybe. The guild, of course, itself, you have to be 3rd level to join the guild. And artifacts are not for sale here, of course. Public entrance, there's an identify service. It's 100 gold pieces per item to be identified. The service is free for students. Wow, that's interesting. So I like that this information's here. I mean, it helps in any campaign. And then, of course, you can run it the way you want to run it based on this information. You could change it, add to it, whatever. I think it's great. So that's what the Silver Consortium is all about. The next university is called the Wrinkle Academy of Magic. And that's located on the other side of town in the Foreign Quarter. Right there. The Wrinkle Academy of Magic. It's on the other side of the Civic Center. They have a library and an alchemy study. So the Wrinkle Academy of Magic is a brand new school of magic founded by the enthusiastic and intelligent gnome wizard Abel Quillkeeper Humbleborough Har. Abel Har founded the academy in 572 Common Year, purchasing and renovating an old, sprawling manor house in Verbobonc City. The Wrinkle Academy is so new that many places sport fresh paint. Some parts of the building are still under construction. They have 8 lecture halls, 2 libraries. Abel Har has taken the title of Magister Har and has thrown the doors of his school open for all who choose to pursue wizardry. Magister Har's academy has been met with some suspicion by the cautious folk of Verbobonc City. New students are encouraged to review the handbook that I created for the school. Further along, let's go ahead and open that real quick. I usually print these up. I make a handbook and I print it up. So there's a welcome letter that I created by Abel Har. Hard, I misspelled that. It just says, welcome to the Wrinkle Academy and what to expect when you go there. I'll hand this to a player as part of their background. So it makes them really feel like they went to that school. It's just for fun, just for role-playing. It talks about their students, for entrance fees. This is great information, by the way, to help with the background the character writes for his character. Why did he go to the Wrinkle Academy? How was he able to apply and pass the entrance exam? And was he poor? Was he able to afford it? Talk about the student body. The students hail from all around the Flonesse. The largest number of them are human, and there are elves, dwarves, gnomes, and halflings as well. No matter what their backgrounds, at the Wrinkle Academy, students are treated equally. So this place is obviously very friendly. Quite opposite of the Silver Consortium. They're very, it's like a nice place to go, but they're not as strong as the Silver Consortium. Discrimination on the basis of anything other than past actions are not tolerated. Furthermore, every student is given a blank slate upon entering the school. So this player could have been a thief on the streets of Verbobonc, grown up, and then somehow or another he met somebody, got lucky with some money, and I guess he passed a test and gained entrance into this school. And so, his past, any of the laws that he broke, maybe the watch is looking for him from his past deeds. The school forgives you all that, and you start off with a blank slate. Those are just ideas I threw out for somebody's background. Registration talks about the registration period. You get 2 instructional breaks each year, winter and summer. Talks about the school year. About first-year students. Then we talk about continuing the education after the fact. Attending the Wrinkle Academy is not free, of course, but no one who is accepted into the school is ever shut out due to the lack of ability to pay. For those students not blessed with wealthy parents or patrons, we have several different repayment choices available. I just thought of another idea of background. Let's say that it's a thief, and the Thieves Guilds are wanting another wizard on staff. So they take the most promising rogue in their inventory of their organization, somebody that seems to have the aptitude for it, and then they pay to send him to the school, but he's still really part of the Thieves Guild. And I bet the other students don't even know about this, or the teachers. Or maybe they do, but they're not saying anything for a reason. These are all great ideas for somebody's background. So they will continue under our administration. We have a great deal of success with the new program. So we'll go on past all that. Oh, sorry. The student must agree to pay the school 10% of his future earnings, similar to a church tithe. The plan is not for everyone. I think that's because it's a case-by-case basis. If you can't afford to pay for it, I think there's a deal you can be made. You can join the faculty. You become one of the teachers. Some come to teach. It talks about that. The research of facilities. Like I said before, any player that in the campaign with a background, one of the reasons to develop a background is the resources that's available to them. And coming from a large facility like this has great benefit because they have a library, but it's small, but it's growing. Another side quest could be like maybe some of the books that they loot in the dungeons. You know how players find these books to loot, and they want to know how much they're worth, and then they try to go back to town to sell it. Well, this is another great place to bring stuff like that too, because not only will they pay for those books here, but they'll be prized, and they'll be very grateful, rather than just selling it to a bookseller for, who's only interested in it really most of the time for profit, but not always, I guess. Yeah, there is a bookstore in Verbobonc that he really loves the books. They're like his friends. So they have consulting services. Consulting services. We can help. Not everyone who comes into the Wrinkle Academy is here for an education. Some don't have the time to unravel the secrets of magic themselves, even under the guidance of our instructors. They simply want the answers they need to and move on. In addition to teaching services, they're brokers. So that way, if somebody needs a wizard for a service, they can hire a wizard for whatever is needed. Their prices are generally the standard fee in the area. There's a 10% surcharge. Those are the instructors right there. Pictures of them. That's Oval right there, the sort one. Then I talk about the life as a student, what it's like to live there, and they got different dormitories at different years that you're there. Then I have rules, of course, and living arrangements, different dormitories. The class schedule talks about all that. The graduation requirements. Like I said before, this information is only to be used as fuel for your background. Maybe something happened in like your dorm or the way you graduated. You can use this information to pull from it to come up with some really cool background for your character. Individualize it and make it interesting. Maybe you graduated under duress or something. I don't know. Or you have an enemy. One of your fellow students hate you, which I have a whole quest for in itself. Tuition, what it costs to go there. There's internships and apprenticeships too, so you don't have to pay. Now we talk about adventuring. So the most dangerous of any internship involves sending our students out to work for an adventuring party. Another idea for our background. At the same time, it's also the variety most popular with our students, of any which hope to be able to say that helps save the kingdom or slay a lot of monsters over the summer break. That's the kind of thing that attracted many of our students to this arcane arts in the first place. And it's difficult to deny these impulses, who are ever risky they may be. Interns often get to share of any treasure obtained in the course of their summer adventures, make it potential for the most lucrative internships around. So it's possible as a background idea that you're still a student there, and now you're on summer break, and your internship is part of this adventuring group that you just joined. So another idea for a background. We got the faculty. We got Findizer, Amarine, Carnequier, and Lexandri, so the librarian. So these are professors of the separate schools of magic. So let's go ahead and look at Findizer. Findizer is a professor of transmutation and abjuration. She has gray hair, green eyes, wears cloth armor, daggers, whatever. She's all about defense. So it talks about she's an elf, 50 years, adventurer. Talks about her background and things like that. And she also talks about her classes that she teaches too. She's 152 years old. It just gives a face, an NPC to somebody's background. And maybe that's their favorite instructor. And it possibly a friend or a nemesis to return to the academy to talk to them and maybe get help or assistance or advice. Okay, then the next one is Professor Amarine. Short, slender, bluish black hair, large green eyes, cloth armor. So anyways, he has a background as well. Same reasoning. He's human. 28 years old. So it's interesting. And then we have Professor of Necromancy. And Divination. You know, this whole thing about necromancy that I thought about a long time ago. It's not necessarily an evil school of magic, because if you look at some of these spells, they're very valuable. They're very useful. They're not evil in itself. Many of the spells are evil, but most of them are not. So it says here that understanding necromancy, preparing our students in defense against the so-called death magic, is a significant part of our curriculum. And her learned expertise in divination magic is vital to any wizard worth his name. So, you know, that's interesting because, you know, they just like in Harry Potter, they have the defense against the black arts class, kind of like the same thing. You need to teach necromancy to be able to defend against it. That's the reasoning behind that class. All right, so we'll go back to here. The librarian's interesting character to become friends with, in case you want part of your background. He has a great personality, has a lot of information, a lot of knowledge to use to go back and engage with again. So the Wrinkle Academy library has fine collection of spells, scrolls, research materials, and Laxandry does a fine job keeping everything in order. He's kind of like, what was that hairy guy's name in Hogwarts? He's kind of like that guy. Hagrid? Yeah, I think his name is Hagrid. Okay, so these are the schools I came up with. Basic Air Movements 101, Introduction to the Planes, Introduction to Summoning, Monstrous Anatomy, Something for Nothing, Piercing the Veil. I just do this for role-playing purposes. Maybe the conversation will come up in the game sometime. Evocation classes. First and Light. That's a great name for a class. Running Hot and Cold. Introduction to Magic Missile. Now Hear This. Give Me a Hand. Power in Tight Spaces. Timing is everything. The most important thing an evoker can learn is control. Working with staves. Then we got another school of classes, and another school of classes, and another school of classes. Look at the necromancy, has 10 classes in itself. It's a lot here. Then we talk about the enclosing. Then we have a closing letter from Obelhar himself. Your education is just beginning. So it finishes it off of why you should go to their school. Great. This gives a lot of personality to that school, and it gives a lot of flavor to the character's background, to where they could be from. And I had a player from here once, and he loved it. Okay, let's wrap this up with the map here. We talked about Verbobonc City and the 2 universities there. We talked about the Gnarley Forest, and you can see the 4 clans. Clan Saradal, Clan Meldoran, I can't read that one. Then Clan Felafel, and Clan Enlightened. And Clan Felafel is the wizard clan, the 5 wizards that rule it. And then, of course, down south is the fairy kingdom of Celene, and there's Anstead, where that wizard school university is. And one last thing that I didn't mention. And then up here on the far up northeast is the Dyvers, the free city of Dyvers. And of course, if you keep going east, is the free city of Greyhawk. Individual wizards could be from any of these villages, even down in the Wild Coast. So if somebody wanted a really interesting background, wild background that had to do with maybe slavery or corrupted nobles, they could be from the Wild Coast. But one thing I'd like to add before we end this video is the Green Valley. So if we can scroll in to the Kron Hills, Tolvar is the capital of the Free Assembly of Gnomes. The Green Valley is nestled in the Kron Hills, just at the foothills of the Lort Mill Mountains. And they specialize in illusion magic. There's quite a few gnome illusionists that in the population of the gnome of Greenway Valley. It doesn't mean there can't be wizards as well, magic users. So if there was a gnome in the party, not only can they easily be from the Wrinkle Academy in the Verbobonc City, but they can be from any of these little villages like Tolvar, and they're apprenticed to a master wizard or an illusionist there in the gnome country there. So I just want to wrap that up. So that finishes my video on Wizards of Verbobonc and starter locations for a player wizard in the lands. So thank you for watching. Please comment below of anything you'd like to add or something I might have left out, or some more ideas of where a wizard could be from in this area. I'd love to hear it. Also, if you want to support my channel, please go to my Patreon, and every membership counts and it helps me continue making these videos. So until next time, thank you and happy gaming.